Well, hello friends. I'm David Vos, and I'm standing here in Texas, and it's very cloudy. It's been raining for days. There's another storm coming, a tropical storm that may become a hurricane force coming up through the Gulf, so I imagine we're going to get a lot more rain over the next few days. But it's a beautiful, beautiful day. Well, I hope you're all having a wonderful day where you are. Friends, this is going to be an unusual video. I've got some things on my mind that I've been wanting to share with you all that I believe is going to revolutionize the way we think about our world. Now, I've been doing that on some different issues. I think if you go back and look at some of the videos that I've been making for some years now, they've been on the revolutionary side, revolutionizing our way of thinking. I've come to believe that everything we've been told is a lie. And the more I look into it, the more I realize that it's really worse than we thought. It is bad, probably worse than you could imagine. Our very globe that we're walking upon, the concept of what are the stars, what is the earth. Let's just think about this for a moment. We're taught a worldview, not only politically, religious views that are completely wrong, psychological things that are absolutely wrong. Psychologically, you're being thwarted. They're telling you you're bad, you're born bad, that you're not worthy of life unless you earn life. And you get that from various levels, not just on a religious level. You know, people could do something wrong that would make this great, amazing God who created the universe hate you. And somehow or another, He's created this evil place called hell that's going to burn you alive forever. Boy, you must be pretty important that the God of the universe, this big bearded man that controls all the levers like Oz behind the curtains, and you believe this whole thing, right? You've got this thing in your head that they've told you that you're unworthy. And so the psychology is obviously made into the world to keep human beings so they never reach their potential. But what I'm beginning to find out is that there's some other aspects to this. Recently, in the last, I don't know how many years, really just a few years, there's something going around called the flat earth. Now, I've gone on record that I don't believe in the flat earth. But you see, I have to say, it's not that I don't think the earth could be flat. But friends, now we're told that we have to believe that the earth is a sphere, or we have to believe that it's flat. And honestly, we've got to be completely and total imbeciles to think that somehow there's proof for any of this. We've gone, I don't know how many thousands of years, and we've depended upon our philosophers and scientists to tell us that, well, you don't understand it. This is calculus that is very beyond your comprehension. It takes up the entire chalkboard. It's physics. You don't grasp E equals mc squared. You don't understand. But somehow or another, we know that light travels at 186,000 miles per second. But we cannot explain to you why we know that. Somehow or another, we know that those little white specks out in space, and we've known this for thousands of years, but we know that they're stars, and they're the exact same thing as our sun. There's big ones and little ones, and we know that around every star there are planets. Now, it could be one planet or 100 planets. There's large and small. And we're going to call them solar systems. And we have things called asteroids and meteorites and stuff. Sometimes at night you'll look up in the air and you'll see this thing called a meteor shower, and we know exactly what that is. We're standing on an Earth that looks solid, and we can look up into the sky and see the blue sky, and at night we see all these little things we call stars. This has all been put into our minds as though we know exactly what we're looking at. But in fact, there is not one picture of the Earth from space looking back so that we can verify that the Earth is a big round sphere. Now, a lot of you say, well, yeah, but we get in an airplane and we go all the way around the Earth and we come back to the other side, so therefore it's got to be round. Well, but we don't go all the way around across the North Pole and back for some reason. We only go east and west. Now, I know there's some people who say, yes, we have made expeditions across the North Pole. You know, like we have flown from America to Russia over the North Pole. But it's dangerous because it's so cold. Well, how convenient. Same thing with the South Pole. There were definite treaties that were established about the time that airplanes got going, whereby they actually do not allow planes to go over the South Pole. I have heard that there were certain airlines at one time that had a route that went near the South Pole. And because I cannot investigate every lead, and I don't think any of us can, one man cannot investigate all of this. It's just too much, and we don't know for sure if there really have been expeditions. All we know that, an admiral in the Army, Admiral Richard Byrd, he tried to fly across the South Pole and took a whole expeditions and the government and all their military equipment, and evidently they couldn't make it. So, if that's true, and I know that was back in the 1940s and stuff, but, we have better airplanes today. But it seems like after that, at some point, there were treaties that were signed whereby individuals were not allowed to go down there. So I don't think that there's been too many, if any, people that have flown over the South Pole or the North Pole. So if you're just going to go by the idea that, well, planes go around the world, then you could say, well, then maybe the world's a cylinder. We're going around the cylinder. See, in other words, observation, just by looking at planes flying around and, just from what we can gather, it's not going to prove that the Earth is a sphere. Nor is it going to prove that the Earth is a flat surface, that somehow the airplanes are just going around in a corkscrew way, and the sun and the moon are just a few thousand miles above us, and they're going around like a corkscrew, and the North Pole is the center of a map. We don't have any proof for that either. None. So why would I then believe in the flat Earth? I mean, if that's all you got, that the Earth is flat and that's it, because it looks flat, that's not enough. All right, well, we did some experiments and it looks like it's flat and okay, that's interesting, and it may very well prove that something's going on and they're deceiving us, but it doesn't prove what shape the Earth is ultimately. It could be that the Earth is a huge ball, so vastly bigger than what we've been told that it does appear to be flat, because maybe instead of 24,000 miles around, maybe it's a million miles around, right? Or maybe this Earth goes in an endless plane forever and ever and ever. You say, well, that's impossible, Dave. It can't be. But see, friends, we don't know. But let me give you a little illustration as to why that could be. All right, now, some of you might have known that I've given this illustration in the past about how the universe is infinite. Because if you went out into space and you came finally to a wall, let's say you went millions and millions and trillions and gazillions of millions of light years away, and finally you came to the edge of the universe, and you found this huge wall. You cannot imagine that behind the wall is nothing, that it stops there. Because if you imagine the wall, you can also imagine space beyond the wall. And as we've said, the universe is only a concept anyway. Time and space, according to our science even today, is really just a concept. And the physical universe is really just light, which is visible and undetectable, And so whatever the universe is, the only thing that we can get out of what it is how we can conceive of it. If the real universe was in some kind of dimension that we could not access, we wouldn't know it was there, and we'd have no way to acknowledge it. We would not be able to explain it. All we have is math and concepts. And I'm saying that the universe, whatever it's like, whatever it is, must go forever. You can take a line and you can go in a straight line forever. And so the universe then mathematically must be infinite. But there was something that I had not yet put together until recently. And I feel that the Holy Spirit is working to explain something far, far more amazing than we've ever thought of before. Let's use that same illustration that the world must be infinite because you cannot imagine nothing. You can't imagine this big wall where the whole thing just stops. Well, now think about it. Think about what we just said. What we imagined as an end to the universe is a wall. A wall is physical. And we just said the universe could be a lot more things than just physical. But what is physical? Well, science knows this. We've known this for a long time. It's just like we're not putting it all together. But the physical, E equals mc squared. Light is transformed, or energy is transformed into matter, and matter into energy. So the universe is basically energy, and there is no time and space in light. Pure light has no time or any space to it. It's something beyond the realm of the physical. But when you slow the light down, it refracts into colors, and you slow it down further, and it can take on form. What causes light to take on form? Well, scientists say it's mass. Mass has a certain power that pulls the light, and so it warps the light. And so if you think about this, the physical universe then is not going to be an infinite plane, because the physical universe is going to have to bend and warp. Now the light itself, you might say, could be infinite in all directions, except that there is no directions, there's no space, there's no time. It is only a concept. It's like putting a projection onto a screen, and it looks like this beautiful earth, and you can walk to the next city and play and everything like that, and there's trees growing and mountains and streams, but it's just a flat screen. And nowadays they've come up with the technology to make a hologram. And it appears for all practical purposes that you're in real life 3D. And so it appears that you're in a physical environment, and there's physical things all around you, and you're experiencing it, and yet it's not real at all. It's exactly what we're talking about. The universe is infinite because of mind. Conceivably, it is infinite. As long or as far as we can imagine, it will go. However, the idea that there is a wall, and then beyond that there's got to be something else, is not true. Because in this scenario, what I'm about to explain, there could actually be a wall. And the wall then would actually be time. You see, because if I went forever and ever and ever and ever into one direction, you know, I'm traveling on this long journey, and maybe I've traveled for years and years. Well, eventually I'm going to die. And scientists say that if we travel at the speed of light, we'll turn into light. See, we go back into energy. And, of course, there's no time and space there. So there's a wall. The wall, then, is simply time. You can't break the time barrier. So there is, in a sense, in the physical realm, there is a limitation. Now, you can extend the physical realm infinitely, but you must do it a certain way. The only way that you can extend the physical universe, you could not do it with two parallel lines that would extend infinitely. Because, you see, those two parallel lines would keep going and come right back around and meet themselves in a circle at the other end. Simply because light will eventually warp around mass. Now, I believe the definition of mass in reality is lust. I think gravity is a desire. I think anytime you have any desire, that desire is what pulls energy into a form. And that is how I believe our thoughts work, and that is how we conceive of the universe. I believe the universe is only mind. And so you can think of it that way, which is the real way to think about it, or you can look at it on a scientific basis. And you can say, yes, the physical universe must have limits because of the time barrier. However, what if every sphere of physical existence, which is a pulling in and a form created by some desire or purpose that individuals, spiritual beings, have that form these worlds that we live in. And imagine these individuals that are the creators then of their own reality. And with their thoughts and desires like gravity, they're pulling their thoughts, the light, their consciousness, and warping it around themselves. And therefore we might imagine that each of these little communities would look something like what we've been told. The center would be a bright light, pure energy. And around that light, there would be various planes or dimensions or wavelengths. As the light radiated out and began to warp and make some kind of form, you might then imagine that the thought process or the desire or the thinking would come from within, and the form would be like a body around that person. This also lines up with the scripture that says that Jesus Christ dwells in us and we are His temple. We are His body. The church is called the body. And it says that He came to redeem His body. And it says He's the mind or the logos that was with the Father from the beginning. And that our Father lives in the light, in unapproachable light. That our Father in heaven is light. And that He dwells in us. And we're the temple, that the body is the temple. And so the Bible teaches, the esoteric wisdom teaches in the symbolic language what our universe is. It talks about the 12 gates that you enter into the temple. And of course we've got 12 months in which we're born into the physical world and we take on form. And of course the esoteric wisdom talks about the sun and all the planets. There are 7 of them, and it calls them the Great Serpent. And it's this DNA, or this serpent, as above, so below. The little DNA corresponds with the solar system, and the solar system corresponds with the galaxy, and the galaxy corresponds with the universe, which is our Father in heaven, the Adam Kadmon, or the heavenly man. And so this is what we were taught for centuries, but we never understood it. And now today, with modern science, and I do not believe that modern science has come to the understanding that they ought to have, but I am not of the opinion that the modern scientists cannot understand some very powerful things. They must know something. They have all these questions they're hiding from us. I don't believe the photographs and the video that we see where the eagle has landed and one small step for mankind. I don't believe that was true. It was done somewhere in a studio. It's all made up. I have no faith in NASA at all. It means deception. I have no faith in our scientists or our doctors when they say that this mountain was carved out by glaciers, and another guy says it was carved out by rushing water. Another one says it was the tectonic plates that moved and made a big crack or something. There's all kinds of things that they've been lying to us about, or that they just don't know. I think they want us to think that they know a lot more than they do. However, some of their basic science is kind of right. E equals mc squared is based on some truth. I think that they've gotten it right, that light travels at 186,000 miles per second, and that explains a whole lot. You know, how we talked about light warping because of mass and gravity. I believe in that because it explains the universe that I'm about to share with you, but they didn't go far enough. They never really understood the conclusion of the matter, and I don't know whether we'll ever understand the conclusion of all the matters of the universe. But I think we're going to go one step further here today. Because what I'm trying to tell you is that this fits perfectly the scenario that we've been shown for a long time in our books and science books and stuff, where we see this big sun and around it we've got planets. And I think spheres are formed exactly for the reason that we already have enumerated. Because mass brings in light and warps light around itself to make form. And as many scientists are beginning to understand, mass really is lust. It really is thought. It really is a desire. Desire is what brings things to you. And I think this is why the Bible says that whatever we desire in our prayers, we shall receive. It may be something good or something bad. We should reject the fear and hang on to the love, because there's no fear in love. And if we want the good things, we have to believe in the good things, because the deceiver is always trying to deceive. So what we're talking about is a wavelength. Scientists know a little bit about this. You go to a big pond and you throw a pebble in the pond, and you notice that there are these waves that radiate out from the spot where the rock hit in the middle. But if you look carefully, there's some other waves that are coming back in towards the center. And this is very odd, but it is scientifically proven that we have radiation going outward and inward. And what that really is something called a torus field. You see, you have a negative and a positive pole. Every globe or sphere has a positive and a negative pole. The positive would be where things came in, at the top of your head, where you receive the influence of the Spirit. The bottom, say down by the womb, is where you give birth, and that physical part is formed, where the mass begins to build. And so it's kind of like a sphere with a top and a bottom, and it's also like a plane with an in and an out vibration. But you see, the vibrations going out and coming in aren't really on a plane, they're on a sphere. They're going out in all directions. And now when you throw the stone on the water, you only see the ripple effects on this plane or the surface of the water. But in space, when you have something that moves in the center, a motion, a desire, a thought, that initial movement, that action that was plopped in the middle, is doing two things. It's sending out vibrations, and at the same time it's receiving other vibrations. It's almost as if it's a communication. And as it does this, it makes form. Now, we know in science today that there are light waves and radio waves and gamma waves and different kinds of these vibrations. And they act in different ways. Some of them go faster, some of them go slower. See, light waves are very, very fast, right? They're very subtle and quick, and light can travel at 186,000 miles per second. However, radio waves or sound only travels at 600 miles an hour. And so you see, the physical universe may be very solid, but within the physical, there is these other vibrations that are going along at will. Even though you think it's physical, you know, there might be radio waves that can actually penetrate the wall. When you have an internet connection, you notice that you can get your internet signal right through the wall. So you see, there are lots of different, you might say, dimensions and vibrations going on around us. And each of them take on their own extended circle, because it goes out in ripples. And so if you're looking at a solar system like such as ours, with the sun in the middle, the pure dynamic energy that's radiating out, as you go along, you notice that somehow these planets form, as we're told, as far as we understand it. And we have some knowledge of this just from experience. We can go outside and look up in the sky, and you can see the sun, and you can see the moon, and people like Aristotle and even astronomers today can look through their big telescopes and they can see Mars and Venus. And so we know that these planets are different than the stars that are further way out that are further out, long, long, long distances. And so I have no doubt that there are stars out there that also have planets as ours. You see, it works the same. The energy comes out from the center like the sun. Now, they say the sun is almost perfectly round, absolutely perfectly round. However, the earth is maybe a little bit more like a donut. It's not quite as round. And the reason for that is that the sun is a central point of energy. So it's going to be radiating outward at equal dimensions, like when you drop a pebble in the water and you see this perfect circle being radiated out from that. So it's going to be perfect. However, when you're talking about something that's more solid in the physical realm, because of the fact that the physical world might be distorted in some way by its coming into close proximity to, say, another object. We can see this with tidal waves when we come near the moon at certain times of the month. And so there's a bulge on one side of the planet. And this may also be the reason why we have tectonic, volcanic eruptions and stuff, where one side of the earth gets a little hotter and starts erupting, and there's like a bulge happening because of certain influences. So there's a lot of stuff that we really do know. But follow me, friends, because we're going to find out something that is just totally, completely amazing that scientists are not telling us. And it has to do with the shape of our world. Wait a minute, Dave. You just said that the earth is round. And you gave us perfectly good reasons to believe it is. Well, not so fast. Remember what I said. I was giving the illustration about how the universe has got to be infinite. Because if you put a wall there, you can't imagine that it would just stop right there. But, and it's just mathematical. You can add zeros to a 1 infinitely. You can go in an infinite direction outward, and you can go in an infinite direction inward, and there's got to be infinity. We've been thinking about this for thousands of years with Aristotle and Plato and Pythagoras, and we know that numbers are infinite. Mathematics is infinite. And we can conceive to infinity. But what we did not put into the equation is the fact that human beings cannot contemplate infinitely at one time. So in other words, mass is finite. Energy itself is infinite. Mind is infinite, but mass must be finite. However, since we are spiritual and we're infinite, we can conceive of thinking about things and forming worlds infinitely. And so, yes, the universe could exist, the physical universe could exist, infinitely. But the physical world come and go. Because when we have a thought, we don't stay with that one thought. We change that thought, like a garment. You put a garment on and you take it off. And so the reality of the universe is the spiritual, not the physical. And so if it's only an illusion, then it's temporary. And you might say it's also small. It's not going to be infinite, because it's not going to be infinite in time or even infinite in space. Because if you travel the speed of light towards one of those stars out there, you can travel at 186,000 miles per second and turn into light itself. And then all of a sudden there's no more time and space. So therefore, if there's no more space, it's not there anymore. You realize it's a concept, that the only reality is the spirit. And so in reality, those stars don't exist at this time. At this moment in our time continuum, those stars, none of them exist. Oh, our sun exists, or else we wouldn't be getting heat and we wouldn't have life here on this planet. But all of those stars that you see all exist in different time continuums. We're only seeing the light from that star that took zillions of years to get here. Okay, so now we're seeing it zillions of years later in this day and age right here on Earth. David Bose is looking at that star now. But what we're seeing is a star that was there zillions and zillions of years ago. And it may not even be there now. So we're not looking at our own time continuum. And so what we're seeing out there is also an illusion. And therefore it is impossible to go there, because we would die on the way out. If we could go the speed of light, we would still not be able to get there, because we would just turn into energy and it wouldn't exist. It would just be thought. It wouldn't be physical. And if we slowed it down and we, say, went half the speed of light, well, we don't even know if we could survive that physically. But even if we could, it would take us many, 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 many centuries to get to these stars. And by the time we got there, we'd die of old age. You see, it wouldn't be something anyone would want to do, right? Who would want to live their life in a capsule, right? In a little spacesuit, sucking food through a straw? It would be ridiculous. It's not practical. It isn't physically or humanly possible to go anywhere outside of the physical earth. But Dave, the Sumerian tablets talk about beings who came from the stars. And you say you believe in this. They were gods. And they lived on Sirius. Well, for one, the star Sirius is only 8.6 light years away. And there's some other stars that may be involved, like Vega and certain stars like that. Well, many of these stars that we're talking about are very close in proximity to our neck of the woods. So it might be conceivable that you could actually travel through space because, 8 light years might not be impossible. However, I think it might just be impossible. Because you see, that's not how things work. It's another space-time continuum, and we're not there. It's not the way life works. The physical realm is only an illusion. It's warped light. We're living in a hologram. This isn't real. So what shape is this unreal reality? What shape does the illusion take? Well, that's kind of a silly question. But it's a real question, and I'm going to give you the answer. As I said before, I think the most logical answer would be that a group of beings in their consciousness would have a purpose, a desire, a plan, and their plan would manifest around them in a world like a hologram. Now, would that hologram be round? Well, it would be simply because we would be in the center, our consciousness, our being, and we would be projecting out from our being around us, perhaps in a circle, everything that we thought about who we were and what we wanted to do. And so therefore it might look something like a planet. However, remember, perhaps our minds are not even on this planet. Remember, as above, so below, the Adam Kadmon, the heavenly man, and how we are one with God and He is one with us. Is it possible that the light that is in the sun is the exact same light that is in the center of the universe? Is there some sort of continuum? Because the light, remember, there is no time and space. So it would be very easy to imagine that the light, no matter where it is, whether it's the light of the galaxy or the light of the universe or the light of the sun, or even the light that is within your inner being, the God principle within you, the mind, the source, the spirit within you, the Christ. It's connected to the sun, and it's connected to the galaxy, and it's connected to the universe. And therefore, in your innermost being, there's no time and space, and you were there with God, clapping your hands for joy at the founding of the world. Because that is the founding of the world, right? Not in time or in some space, not in some beginning, but in the source. And in the source, we're all there with our Father in heaven clapping for joy. The problem is our thoughts are trapped, and we've made this illusion around us. And so our consciousness is trapped in our fears and in these monsters that we create. And so in that case, you might imagine our consciousness, all of us together as a composite consciousness. We might all live in the sun. That might be our source. All of us. Maybe we live in the sun. We don't really live on the earth. See, because there's no real time and space. This is just an illusion. So maybe we're thinking with our minds from within ourselves, which is the physical sun. It was connected somehow to the sun. And the physical part that we see around us is another part or a dimension of reality. It's our conscious thinking. So when we go to sleep, we leave our bodies. And where do we go? We go to our real self. We go to the inner part, the energy, the light. So what shape is the world then? Well, in that case, the world takes on a very strange shape. It looks like a solar system. And there are 7 subtle bodies. And you have mental and emotional and physical and all these different subtle bodies. And you exist in every one of them. It is only your conscious self that is here on this place called Earth. And so if we look then at how the energy comes into the planet and leaves the planet, it appears that we're being fooled a little bit here. Because we picture a round globe with the positive being on the top and the negative being on the bottom. But you see, that's not really true. Because as we said, if there was a pebble that fell in the water, it would ripple outward, but it would be on a surface. See, you're getting the ripplings going out and coming back in on a surface. But if you do that in an area and radiate outward in all directions, then you see it would be a bit spherical, but the north would not be necessarily on the top, and the south wouldn't necessarily be on the bottom. But you see, what would be going on is that the north would literally be in the center, and the south would be at the outer extremities coming in. It would literally be an energy going out, radiating out, and an energy going in. The energy going in would be mass, would be the physical, creating the physical. As the energy goes out, the desire, it creates the physical, which comes in, which makes the mass, which pulls, which is gravity. And so that gravity then would come in, and it would accumulate around the center. And indeed, it would probably be a round globe, or very close to that. And we then would be living in the physical part. And the eyes that we have on our body, which only see visible light, and the ears, which only hear sounds that come from physical objects, that's the only thing that we're aware of in this consciousness that we're in here. And this would be the earth that we would live on. But wait a minute. Could it possibly be an infinite round? In other words, what's to say that this vibration within me isn't going from within me outward to infinity? And in that case, maybe this round globe is infinite, and that would mean that it covers the entire universe. So in reality, the whole universe is my enchilada. The whole universe is my oyster, and I'm the little oyster inside my shell. And this shell covers the entire universe. Why do we imagine that the earth is so small? Because any movement anywhere in the universe, it radiates outward out into infinity. Oh, well, here's the reason. As we said before, our conscious mind, there is no time and space. So this physical that is creating the shell, it's only illusion. And so the illusion has to eventually stop. And the illusion stops with time. See, as I grow and as I learn, then the illusion disappears. So there is a point in which this mirage disappears. However, the physical is still infinite because I continue to think on into infinity, but I think different things. And so there's a time when I'm a baby, and there's a time when I'm mature and I'm old, and I no longer think like a baby. And this happens with an entire planet or a solar system. And people graduate and they move on to other worlds because the illusion fades. The circle only has limits. So what I'm doing here, just very, very generally, basically, is I'm laying an outline to explain why the universe really is kind of what we've been told. But here's the part that you were never told. It actually is infinite. There is a continuum. You see, we just used that word, a space-time continuum. Now, if you really get down to what continuum means, it means that it continues. So scientists have used this word, and they really know what it means. It means that we are going to have to exist forever. We're infinite. And therefore, from one world to the next, there's got to be a continuum. We've got to be able to get from one world to the next world. There has to be something connecting the worlds. You can't just be and then not be. If the physical world is what we're thinking or desiring, and then all of a sudden we get tired and we stop wanting that, we can't just stop thinking for a while and then boop, start thinking again, and boom, here's another world. No, there's a continuum. There's a space-time continuum. Now, the way to get from here to the stars isn't by space travel. You can't do that. That's not how it works. That's why they use that word, space-time continuum. You've got to get from that world to this world the proper way. The way that it's done is through birth, death, and birth. You're born into the world. You enter in through one of the gates into the temple. How do you enter into a world? Well, as most of you know, you come out of your mother's womb. If you got into your mother and you had to come out through the bottom, don't you think you probably entered in through the top? This is why we say that the North Pole is up and the South Pole is down. So we see the world with a North Pole and a South Pole. But what's really happening is the energy's radiating from the sun. So everything that comes into the universe that makes mass enters in through the north positive pole. And when it's born as mass, it comes in as energy through the top. And when it's born as a mass, or as a human being, it has to come from the womb, from the bottom of the earth. That means that not only are you born from your mother's womb, but you're also born from Mother Nature's womb. And that means that the physical elements that compose your body came from this physical earth. There is an area inside the earth, a continuum where you actually were. If you did not really exist before you were born for 9 months, remember that in the esoteric wisdom, hell always is associated with 9. And judgment is associated with 9. And so you're in the womb of the earth for 9 months, and then you're born upon the world. But you must realize that you actually did exist before you came out of your mother's womb. But the form that you took did not exist before that. You had perhaps another form at a different time. You continually have different thoughts, and you partake of different worlds. And we go from world to world. We transmigrate. So that's how we get from the center of the galaxy, which is light, which is pure being, and manifest on various worlds and transmigrate down through the universe and finally ended up here on this earth. And then you finally ended up in your mother's stomach. Because you see, there is a space-time continuum. And so that also means beings that don't have the physical form go into another world by going through the center of the earth and coming out on another plane. Because that's the continuum. That's where we go back into the spirit. So if you want to see what's going on in another world, you're not bound to the laws of physics because you're not in the physical world. But you're still bound to a law, to the space-time continuum. Your mind has got to think appropriately from one step to the next. See, even if you're not in the physical world, you still have subtle bodies. They're not the physical body. They may be the emotional body or the mental body, but they're different bodies. They may be a light body or a physical or a spiritual or emotional body, but they're still bodies and they have certain rules. And every being that lives, that takes on more physical form, primarily exists in the spiritual. And therefore the space-time continuum is in the center. You can leave this world. And the book of Ecclesiastes talks about this. I believe in the 12th chapter of Ecclesiastes it talks about the silver cord that's attached to your body. You can leave this world and you can go see many places and astral travel to many worlds, but you always come back because you're held to the physical realm with this little cord. But if you ever die, that cord is severed. And then you literally don't have that physical body anymore, and you have to come up with another one. So you end up going through the space-time continuum into the center of the earth. From that place, inside the center of the earth, there are doors in which you can go through the space-time continuum into the next world, into your next body, which either could be on this earth or into another earth like this one, another place, another solar system, as you advance from glory to glory, as it says in 2 Corinthians 3:18. So the question then that people have been asking is, why is it that we don't have any pictures of the earth from in space? And the answer to that is simply because of the Van Allen belt. This is a radiation belt around the earth, about 36,000 miles above and around the earth, that you cannot penetrate because of the space-time continuum. And this is probably why there's not going to be any space travel with the technology that we have presently in some sort of tin can that they shoot up into the sky. That's not how you do it. There were gods that came to the earth, or beings that we call gods, that got here from the stars. But these astronauts, these ancient astronauts, never came to the earth on a tin can propelled by rocket fuel. They got here through the space-time continuum. We ourselves are spiritual beings, and these bodies that we're inhabiting are simply clothes that we can take off at any time. So we have to come to an understanding that the universe is like a hologram, that we are spiritual beings, that the physical realm is temporary, it's illusion, it doesn't actually exist in this infinite reality. However, we're always going to have some kind of form. Our thoughts and forms change. We decide we want this or that. We play the game as we wish. And spiritual strength is something that we're learning here. It's called integrity and loyalty and goodness and kindness and compassion. And when you're able to not think of yourself but to think of others, when you're able to have compassion and integrity, then you're able to escape this physical reality and become far more spiritual and ethereal. And when you're ethereal and spiritual, you can create any body you want and any world you want. And you can enjoy anything you want. There isn't any more death. There isn't any more hunger. There isn't any more sadness. But you literally are then a god, the creator of your domain. That's what we're trying to get to. But at this point, I want to get back to the original point. What shape is the earth? Well, in reality, we're in a hologram. And so anything we imagine could be there. The problem is that we cannot imagine anything that goes against math. See? And so the mind cannot conceive a left without a right. You cannot conceive an up without a down. See? There are certain things the mind cannot conceive. And therefore, in the physical world, we're restricted to the laws of physics. Your subconscious, superconscious mind knows how to make those events occur. Because really, remember, there's no time and space. So when you're thinking from that center point, you're thinking from the beginning of time. And therefore, it makes whatever it is that you want something that was destined to be from the beginning of time. And everything in the universe then will bow to that desire, simply because you formed the desire from your innermost being, which means from integrity, from love, and from the desire for everyone to love, because everything works for good to those who love God. So in your mind, if you're thinking only love and happiness, you can create events that will help you to succeed on your upward path. However, if you're full of fear, you will create temporary monsters. So what we're saying is that the physical universe does go infinitely simply because our minds are infinite. We can conceive of anything we want. And just like we said, if we conceive of a wall, we can't conceive of that being the end of it, because we can always continue to conceive. The only reason, then, that the physical plane does not go on forever and ever is because of time and space and the laws within our own inner thought processes. In other words, we can hold a desire for only so long until we desire something else. And it's not like you couldn't hold something longer if you wished to, but there would come a point, if you want to live your life, that you're going to go and turn your attention to something else. If you really want something, you hold and focus that. But then you get that, you use it, and you don't want to become a prisoner to that. It does not become your prison. You use it for your advantage and you move on. And so the world then is temporary for that reason. And so the physical world that we live on is a globe, and at the same time, an infinite plane. It's just that this infinite plane of thought is warped by time and space into a physical globe. And to get to the next part of the plane, the infinite plane, you must go through the space-time continuum, which is at the northern and the southern ends of each of these globes. And so the physical world warps around itself, around the mass, and makes what is apparently a globe. But in reality, it continues on in the inside of the sphere. And so something like the hollow earth is a little bit more accurate than the flat earth. The hollow earth is not exactly accurate either. Because remember, this is all an illusion. So the physical earth doesn't exist except for on this physical plane. Time and space only exists here. It doesn't exist in the spiritual. And we go in a certain direction on what appears to be, and apparently is, a globe. But there is a continuum. As it goes to the southern part of the pole, it goes inward, and then there is another world. You see, there is no center of the world. It's just another extension of the plane called the planet, which is a plane that extends to infinity, but appears to us to be round globes. And so each one of these apparent globes are actually connected, one with the other. So that every one of these planets are that physical part, maybe one of the 7 subtle bodies that come out from the center spiritual light. But on every solar system and in every part of the world, there is that physical plane, which is a physical plane that goes to infinity. Each of these physical globes, these physical realities, are connected to each other through the space-time continuum that you access by either the North or the South Pole. And so in conclusion, and I'm not going to go much further in this video, we're going to probably do more videos about this, and I want to explain this in a little more detail. But yes, the universe is one, and all physical reality is a plane that is an infinite plane that goes up, down, right, and left. It cannot be a globe in reality, but only in our minds, and as we see it with our eyes, and as we understand it at this present moment in time and in space. In the illusion of time and space, it is a globe. And so yes, you flat earthers are right. The earth is flat. However, for all practical purposes, as a human being standing here today, I am standing on a globe. And I hope that that helps a little bit. But of course, this isn't over. I want to do other videos on this and get this down so that everybody can understand it. This being the first video in a series that, and I don't know if these videos are going to come one after the other, but I'm going to start doing more videos on this particular subject. But this being the first video, I don't know if I was able to explain it in great detail in a way that you could understand it. So I'm going to have to do more videos, and I'm going to add some more information as well. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go, friends. I know this has been a long video. This is David Vos. I hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good one.